Been working on my 71 Chevelle here for quite a while, aka Fast Rust. And as you can see, I don't have much of an interior in there, including seats, but you do see a seat bracket there. What that's for are these seats from Summit. A pair of racing buckets, and I forget the part number here, but they're made by Procar. And they were right around 550 bucks for the pair. And I see now that as I'm making this video, the pair that I bought, they no longer sell. They've updated it with a new part number. They look very similar. What I'm after with this video is to show you in the, well, probably 68 to 72s, what you're going to have to do as far as mounting them. In the directions that are absolute garbage, you can just take these directions and pretty much throw them away because they're not applicable to what you're doing at all. If you read the comments about these seats, you'll see that people say, oh hey, if you want to have these seats mounted in the lowest position to give you the most headroom, you're going to have to trim off the bottom of the brackets. It doesn't make much sense till you get it all in, but what it is these are the brackets that mount onto the adjuster slides on here. Sorry. And they're going to mount more or less like this, okay? So the thick part is inboard there. And what you're going to have to trim off, if you want to mount it in this hole, and I'll show you here, you're going to have to trim off from right about the top of that bottom hole all the way down. You're going to have to trim that off because this part of this bracket interferes with the floor pan. Then on top of that, after you trim that off, you're going to have to trim the bolts that mount those to the brackets, to the seat sliders, because these stick out quite a bit. Because after I did all the trimming and take the time to paint it and all that stuff, I went to install it back in here and could not get it to fit. And then finally, old bumbling me noticed that the bolts were sticking down too far and they were hitting this round bar here. You can see all 4 points there. And so that those seat brackets, then they come over the end here and they're held onto this bracketry with that. Yeah, so you're gonna have to trim all that stuff up. Now, as far as specific to the Chevelle itself, I was able to reuse these two holes, the original seat mounts on this car, which mine came with a bench seat that when my dad bought this car in the early 90s, he tossed, having no idea that this car was going to be so collectible. Neither would I, and he said it was in terrible condition, like the rest of this car was. He put some junkyard buckets in there, bolted them to the floor pan, and that's what we had in here until I got rid of them. So that had some different mounting holes that he had drilled. In fact, there's one right there. But I couldn't reuse those, so I just took a step bit and then drilled new holes for those two there, and then put some big fender washers on the bottom side of the floor pan there. And that's pretty much the mounting here in a nutshell. And I'm going to try to do the same thing on the passenger side, assuming that they're similar. So I don't know how useful this might be to anybody, but this is the actual that mount that's in the car I just showed you. That's the part number for it, and it's specific to the Chevelles. And this is the part number for those brackets I showed you that you're going to have to trim if you want it in the lowest position. And I didn't think I was going to mess with it. I put this seat in the driver's side yesterday and took it for a drive, and I'm not tall, 5'9", and I could tell it was a little high, especially compared to what we did have in the car. So I'm going to go ahead and mount at least the driver's side in the lowest position to give the most headroom. I think it's going to be just fine. Let me show you what this would look like here. Okay, so here's the unmodified setup. 3 tabs, and you see all the threads you got sticking out of the bolts there. And then here is what you're probably going to want to do if you're any taller than 5'9", for sure. Trim that bottom part, clean off, and then trim the hardware down as well to make it all fit. Now here you get a good sense for what I'm saying. That will mount in the second hole, sure, but you can't get it, you know, just not totally engineered the greatest, I guess. That's the difference. That's where we're at. Okay, so you're gonna need almost exactly, well, if I can get it to stay, 16 inches in between the holes on the brackets. So as you're arranging these on the actual sliders themselves, you're going to want to get these lined up however you need to get 16 inches from hole to hole. And of course you got slotted holes, so you got a little leeway there, but you can see there are a couple of different bolt holes on here, so you can flip these brackets around if you need to. And in fact, that is what I'm going to have to do, or what I did do over here. This is the one I'm going to have on the driver's side. Even after trimming the mounting hardware for those brackets that go to the sliders, it is still not enough to clear to where you can see where this is not going to make that top hole, because you still have hardware interference. So I had to flip these, take the seat out again, have it out about 100 freaking times, and then rearrange these brackets in such a way to where I still have my 16-inch between the holes, but to where they're offset from the hardware. And now you can see it's going to work. And that's going to move, the way I've got it, is going to move my seat a little more inboard, which I think is going to be just fine, because it felt like it probably needed to go that way anyhow. But, well, I guess we'll see. It's going to move it quite a bit inboard, I think. Proof will be in the pudding. And there it is, all mounted. So on the driver's side, and yes, those brackets that bolt to the floor pans are side specific. I didn't mention that. I showed you the passenger side one. You're going to have to offset them. And the way I have offset was to have the slots, facing towards the outside of the car on both of those brackets. And then that actually moves the whole seat further in, as the brackets have essentially sliding that way. And that actually was perfect. It centered me up just perfect on the steering wheel. The height is right. That's the ticket right there. Pain in the neck, but they are really comfy seats. As long as they hold up, I'll be freaking happy with these. After my bumbling and fumbling around with these, I'm going to come to the conclusion the only one you really need to trim, hardware-wise, is the front outer bolt. Be that the passenger side or the driver's side. It's just where it's going to interfere with the actual mount bracket that goes down to the floor pan. The rest of these are okay with how they sit. They're going to clear those tubular bars that form the other part of the mount. So for example, if you don't trim that one I just showed you, it's going to hit right here where the scratches are. The one back here that hardware is going to clear here, and then the other ones are, let's see, I think they're going to be on this side of this tube, well out of the way. It's no big deal. So that's what you're looking at there. In fact, I just noticed this is the driver's side. You can see that I didn't need to trim these on that inside. And there you have it. Seats are all in, bolted down. They adjust well. They look good. They feel good. The key is that bottom bracket that bolts to the floor pan. You don't have that. I don't know how you mount these. I didn't even know it had this feature when I bought them. and that makes me happy. They got a pretty good range of adjustment on them as well. So that would be all the way forward, which is pretty decent. And it could go back a little bit further than that, but you can compare it there to the driver's seat, which is about in the middle, which you can see from the exposed adjuster there. There's quite a bit of adjustment. And that is pretty much these seats in a nutshell. I guess time just tells, you know, how long they last, how they wear. But that's them. Thanks for watching.